done is better than perfect. Actually, sometimes you have to accept that to get things done, you just have to get things done. And I think sometimes that kind of held me back a little bit in getting where I needed to be with things. And the same can be said with running. If we waited for the perfect conditions and the perfect weather and everything, we wouldn't do it. Sometimes just go.
Hello and welcome to Run the Business, the podcast that explores the place where running and leadership come together. We'll find out how running can help us with leading, managing people, and generally being better in business. We'll also try and answer that question, do runners make better leaders? I'm Anthony Gay, and today I'm joined by a founder who has an inside track on top performers. She worked for 20 years in private and public sector organisations, supporting CEOs, and took her knowledge and experience of the corporate world, along with her exceptional organisational skills, to establish Notebook and Pen in 2018. They help CEOs, managing directors and top execs stay on top of their game. She used to be a run coach, now supports and volunteers at events where she can, and 3 times a week is usually out running as well. Amy Farnfield, welcome to Run the Business.
Hello, thank you for having me.
How are you today, Amy?
Yeah, good, thank you, very good. And you?
Feeling good. Yeah, it's cold, and winter is, it's always a bit different, isn't it, when you go running in the cold, but I'm just about hanging on. I'm just about doing okay.
Good.
Tell us where you are in the world first.
So I'm in Bedfordshire, but kind of just on the Buckinghamshire border, so just outside the kind of home counties area.
Okay, and when did you last go running?
This morning, about 6:30.
So is that a head torch run in these conditions?
It's not too bad actually, because I go out with a friend. We both go before work, and we kind of just stick to the streets in the morning, so it wasn't too bad.
Okay, and tell us a little bit about Notebook and Pen and what you do.
So Notebook and Pen I set up back in 2018 to be a executive assistant outside of kind of the employee setup. So a lot of people were needing that extra bit of support, kind of with project work, as a PA, life, family, etc. And not always something that they could have through their workplace or on a full-time basis. So I became that kind of flexible support to those executives, high-level directors, etc.
Okay, and in the time that you were building up to starting Notebook and Pen, you worked with many people in different parts of industry and business. What sort of characters and what sort of people did you come across? I'm curious as to see where health, fitness and specifically running was in their lives.
So I have worked with small businesses, large corporates, lots of kind of different experiences with different directors, different leaders, different people, different teams. I have generally always had some sort of fitness in my life, be it even just walking, not necessarily running in the early days. That's something that came along a bit later on. And I haven't worked with people that were specifically runners. That wasn't my aim, but I've definitely worked with people and leaders that have had exercise as a part of their work. And I definitely think, being somebody quite senior in a business, you do find they have an outlet of some sort, whether that is a runner or a walker or a swimmer. Actually, I've got a couple of people I work with now that swim. It's definitely a key part of anything, I think, having that exercise as part of their day. And
I said in the intro, you must have had an inside track on so many successful people and had a perspective on different people who were successful in business and in the corporate world. What did you pick up and learn from that time?
It's having time away from the business, and that's not going on holiday, being with family. That's time away from the business to still have your mind on the business and plan the business. And I think that's really key for senior executives and directors, to make sure that they are looking a little bit from the outside back at the business and how it's going and what's going well, what's not going so well, making sure that they can switch off from what are quite high powered roles, and making sure that they have that kind of time to rest and recuperate from everything, to make sure that they're the best they can be when they are in that role as a leader. Definitely making sure that, I say to most people, a bit of fresh air and exercise can make a massive difference to how you feel as well. If you're having a day where there's a lot of things getting to you, and as a leader and a director, you've got a lot of those things going on and you are up against it and there is a lot of pressure. So to make sure you've got something, and I try and work with a lot of them people that I work with now in finding something that works for them and making sure that they have that time put aside. And I'm not going to say, you must go and run. That's not what it's about. But there are, as I said, I've got some that say, right, I quite enjoy swimming, and I make sure I say to them, right, go and find some time for a swim, or go and find some time to walk around the block and listen to a podcast, whatever it might be. So I do bring from what I've seen is important and really helps people at a senior level. I try and do that now in what I do when I work with a lot of people with managing diaries and making sure that we allow that nice balance between work, life, and just being able to switch off and recuperate, really.
Tell us a little bit about your experience then in running and how it's been part of your life over the years. When did it start?
So I reluctantly, I'll use the word, ran at school, as I think we all did. Good old cross countries around the field that nobody really wanted to do in the middle of winter in your shorts and vest. And I suppose I did what I needed to do, and then that was that. I've always been somebody that loves the outdoors and loves being fit. I wouldn't say running was a big part of that through kind of my teens into my 20s. And then I had my son, he's now 12, and as I suppose a lot of mums do, think, oh, I can eat for England, why not? And I put on a lot of weight. And at that point when I had him and I'd put on all this weight, I was a bit like, this isn't going to work. I need to be fit and healthy for him. I want to get back to having a level of fitness and enjoy being the size that I was before. And I then started going to the gym, getting fit, doing some running. And then just kind of, it just has built up over the last 12 years, I suppose.
How did being a run coach come into your life? Was that something that just came off the back of the volume of running that you were doing? And I know you joined a running club, didn't you? You joined Leighton Buzzard Athletic Club.
That's right. So I moved to Leighton Buzzard 8-9 years ago now. And one of my friends was already living here, actually. And I to this day, it's down to him that I joined the running club. And he was like, yeah, come along, come join this running club. And I was like, no, I can just run. He's like, no, it's brilliant. Come and join it. So I joined the running club, and gosh, that's got to be somewhere around 7-8 years ago now, not long after I moved here, and just got kind of the bug, I suppose, and that kind of lovely camaraderie that everybody has in a running club, and the kind of structure, right, okay, I know I'm going to get out on my social run on Wednesday evening, or, I'm going to go out with the group on a Sunday and do a long trail run. So I found that really great, and I really then kind of bought into it all when I started going to their speed sessions, which they used to do. I used to go to their social and really got involved, and they were like, right, do you want to do some of the courses and get more involved? So I ended up doing the England Athletics Leader in Run Fitness course. I got that under my belt, and I started helping out, taking some of the sessions, which was really great, and I really enjoyed that. And then they were like, right, do you want to step up and go and do your coach qualification with England Athletics? So fantastic opportunity, really great. They really supported me doing it, and I did it with another guy, Mike, in the club, so we had each other to kind of work through, because the coach qualifications quite a lot more work and a lot more commitment, giving up some weekends and going and sort of learning everything and putting everything into practice. And then I used that to carry on supporting sessions. And my kind of, I suppose, over the years I've developed with a love for the gym as well, is very much the strength and conditioning side of running. And I say to a lot of people, you don't have to run to be a runner, which they always look at me like, that's a bit strange. But because I quite enjoy the strength and conditioning part of being a fitter runner and making sure that we prevent injury and make sure that we can carry on running as well as we want to for as long as we want to.
As a coach, you must have seen and helped people progress with their running. What barriers and limitations did you find people were putting on their ability to improve? How were there commonalities between the things that you were finding that were stopping people getting better?
A lot of it is people's own self-belief in what they're able to achieve, and that comes across the whole business world as well as in the fitness arena. People are like, but I can't do that. Well, why can't you do that? You can do that. We can find a way for you to do that. People are like, I could never run that. And hands in the air, I still to this day have never run a marathon. I am not what I say a long distance runner. I've run half marathons and I've run a lot of short distance, but that's not my forte. So I was very much for off-road, cross-country, athletics, kind of everything else. But I think what it comes down to a lot of people is the belief in themselves to do what they think they can't do, but they can. And then having the time to put into some of the training and making sure they've got that kind of determination to go out there and do what they need to do. So yeah, I think they're the big things.
You strike me as a very positive person and a very glasses half full person.
Totally.
How do you transfer that to people? How do you give people that confidence that you're talking about? Do you have any tips, tricks to share on that front?
Often there's a lot of people that don't have someone that's their cheerleader, their believer. So I very much want to be that person for them, and I still do in the club. There's people that I see, I occasionally dip into what we have is a Tuesday beginners and improvers session, and I love going along and seeing the development of these people that have kind of started not being able to run and now are doing their 5k and even talking about booking in to do a 10k. And it's just championing and saying to those people, you are doing this amazing thing, keep it going, come along to these sessions, keep doing what you're doing because it's brilliant and you're seeing the benefits of it. So I definitely think champion and supporting these people, and I'm all for, inclusive for everybody into running. So even if I speak to someone now and I'm the sort of person that goes, hi, how are you, have a chat, and they're thinking, oh God, it's one of those runners that just wants to talk to everyone. But I think just championing people and keeping that motivation alive.
Switching back to notebook and pen and the work that you've done, not just in the last few years, but when you were working in that corporate world, you were, I think, much more than a support, weren't you? You were a coach, a confidant. There's a lot more skills that I think you had that have helped you, grow and develop. Tell us a little bit about that. Kind of what did you learn in that space?
I think you work with so many different people, and different people obviously react and approach things very differently. Not everybody working at high level have people behind them, supporting them. Quite often they're not in the support of these people, and therefore they can feel quite isolated. But being that person that's there to support them, you can often, I replace that. I can be there to say, this is what's going well, we're doing this, keep focused, keep going. And like you say, having that person to talk to or someone to just offload to, or throw that kind of different view on something. I often say I play devil's advocate quite a lot, and that's not in a negative sense, but actually seeing things from a different perspective, but from the same end goal. So we're trying to get to the same point, and a lot of leaders don't often have somebody that they can say, look, this is what we're trying to achieve. Am I looking at this the wrong way? Or is there something I'm not thinking about that you can see? And the benefit of doing that now in an external position, which is what we are at Notebook and Pen, and I work with a lot of leaders that quite often will pick up the phone and be like, right, Amy, I'm trying to sort this out. I'm not seeing it. What do you see? And it's great to go, right, from what I've seen over the years, have you tried this approach, or do you think this is not the strategy? We need to go back to it and rethink it, because that's not going to work for one, understanding them, understanding their team, and understanding the culture within the business that they're working within. So there's quite a lot of things I can pull on from my experience, but also being somebody that's sitting outside and looking in, you often bring a totally different perspective to things.
Perspective is such a big thing. It comes up a lot in these conversations. Perspective, and I think if anybody listening to this doesn't have somebody they can speak to, a confidant, somebody that can give them that devil's advocate view, that objective perspective, go find one, because it's so important, isn't it? And particularly if you are in a leadership role, a senior leadership role, it can be pretty lonely if you don't have somebody that you can bounce things off and trust. Definitely.
I do say find somebody. And I think in the corporate world now, there's a lot more of kind of the mentor side of things, where a lot of people are seeking out and working with mentors. And I think that's really great that there's just somebody else there that you can confide in, talk to, that's maybe been there, that understands and can support you on that journey. So yeah, definitely look for somebody.
And the perspective that running gives us, bringing it back into that space, going out there for 15 minutes, half an hour, whatever, doesn't matter. but that time spent running just gives you a physical as well as a mental perspective on things, doesn't it?
Oh, totally. Just for my, I like to go out in the mornings. So mainly because it just means I can get it done in my day, and I have quite high pressure days. So I go out in the morning, but that for me sets me up. I know where I'm going then. I've got a plan. I think things through. I kind of schedule, okay, what does today look and feel like? How's that going to work? A little bit of what was left from yesterday. Do I need to close that off, or do I need to bring some of that forward into today? So yeah, definitely kind of having that time to plan and reset and whatever it is that needs to get you in the right place to be in the moment that you need to be in today.
You must be a really organised person, to say the least, in what you do. Tell us a little bit about your approach to being organised and on top of things, not just for other people, for yourself. And how do you manage to combine, we talked about balance earlier on in life to make sure you've got the right stuff going on, you need to mix it up. How does that work for you, and what tips, tricks can you kind of share on your approach to that?
So some people are quite scared when I show them what my diary looks like, but I use something called time blocking, and I use it for clients. And basically we block out the week in colours and blocks of things, and that includes everything. That includes your time to go for your run, your exercise, whatever it is you're doing, any personal meetings, plus your work diary, plus some time for lunch, whatever it is. And mine is no different. So I plan out, okay, this week I know maybe I'm going to go to the gym on Monday, I'm going to run Tuesday, I've got a Pilates class Wednesday, whatever it might be. So I go through my diary and I block those times out. And then to me, I'm committed to those things. And I think what I find with a lot of people that say, well, I'll go for a run. Well, when are you going to go for a run? Commit to it and go for it. And I find that really helps to have that in the diary. And also I say that for people, they go, oh, well, I can't go then. There's going to be a degree of flexibility. And I say that what's there isn't fixed, but it's stuff that has to be done, and you should want to do it in terms of those things that you set yourself. And being organised, I do that. I block everything out. I colour code it for all my different clients. I have lots of reminders. I have lots of follow-ups, chase-ups, to-do lists. Love all of that. That's just me. It's a little bit obsessive for some, but the amount of work I do, it works for how I need to operate. And then when I work with clients, I do very much the same thing. And I find out when I start working with somebody, I'll say to them, okay, what is it you like doing, or what is it you want to be able to do? And we try and entwine that. So I've got clients that want to find time to be able to go for a swim. I've got clients that say, well, I want to go to the gym, but I'm not a morning person and I don't want to go in the peak rush hour. So we'll try and find a time that works for them to do that. Or I've got other clients that do run, and I'll say to them, well, when are you going out? And it's quite nice sometimes, because as we do WhatsApp, Teams, all these platforms that people message, and quite often a message will ping up going, I've just been for my run, and I'm like, that's brilliant, I'm going for mine. And it's sometimes a little bit of accountability, isn't it, with somebody to make sure you do these things.
What do you say to people that have that excuse? I just don't have time, Amy. There's no time to do this.
I'm like, get up earlier, because that's what I've had to do over the last few weeks. It's been really busy getting ready for the end of year, and what I found is I've just had to literally get up that hour earlier every single day, go out, do my run, get back, be at my desk for 8 o'clock, get started. And they'll say, but then I'm tired. We'll go to bed a bit earlier. I know we're not going to be able to watch whatever it is on the television, but there is ways of doing it. And I try and find a way with these people and say, look, maybe do this. Or they're like, oh, my son's swimming lesson. Great. Well, how long do they swim for? Half an hour. Well, that's 20 minutes. Then you can quickly either jog around the block, or it's utilising and finding time that you can fit things in. So I'm a little bit of I don't take excuses very well. I'll always find a way.
Makes total sense. And I think every bit of time, I think if we add up the time in a day that we spend scrolling social media or just sort of, daydreaming, it can be a good thing, I know, but sometimes just sort of sat really not doing anything is a waste.
Yes.
How do you help people prioritise the important stuff? Because as well as having the time and being organised, it's knowing what's important to do at that point in time, isn't it? So how does that work for you?
Well, a lot of companies will have their kind of long-term, short-term goals. They'll have what's happening, in the month, targets, whatever. I predominantly work with a lot of smaller businesses now. So they're kind of going, right, okay, we know what we need to achieve this month or this quarter or whatever it may be. And then I work with them and we look at it and we break that down into kind of, okay, so if that's what that is, what does that translate to in terms of your week, in terms of your days, what must be done at certain points. And we often then block. This is where it comes to managing diaries and blocking tasks time. So, okay, so that's the task that's got to be done this month. Let's find some time. Let's block that out so we know that's going to be done. I always work with a buffer, and I don't tell my clients, and my secret's out now, but I always put things in earlier than they need to be, so that if they go, well, I can't do that, then I know there's a buffer in there. Yep. And if I put a reminder in, the reminder's normally with a date way earlier than it needs to be, so they don't know. I've learned from experience. So we make sure we kind of then break it down into kind of the bigger strategy, the bigger time frame, into kind of the more manageable, and obviously in that. Now, there's always going to be that curveball in life, whatever it is, that comes in, crashes your week, your day, whatever, and throws everything out of the water. That's why I always build buffers in, and why I always make sure that we're planning around, that we always have that time. And I always have what I call business time in my diary and in my client's diary, which sounds a bit, well, what's business time? Well, that's for anything else that doesn't fit in any other gap, but we know we're going to have those things every week, and everybody has things that come up that they just don't suspect are going to come up.
Yeah.
So that then packs in time to make sure that we can cover those things, so that we're achieving everything that needs to be achieved, broken down into much smaller steps.
This podcast is obviously all about how running might help people in business and in leadership. Talking specifically about yourself, how does it help you be better in what you do? Have you noticed differences from when you were running and how you approach life and work?
I'm a nicer person if I go for a run. And I'm sure my husband, my son, my friends will agree. For me, obviously what I'm doing can be quite stressful. It's quite long hours. I put a lot into what I do. I absolutely love what I do, and I love my clients and what the work is that we do. So my head is in the game many hours of every day. And I think for me, running, it's a little bit of escapism. It's a little bit of, I just need to go out and do something for me, to clear my head, to think things through, to analyse what's going on and put everything into a bit of perspective. And I find that even the last thing you want to do sometimes is just go for runs. You're like, oh, I've got this massive to-do list, I've got loads to do, but I know it will benefit me going for that run. And then when I've kind of thought about it recently, I was like, okay, sometimes it just wasn't happening when I wanted to, and I try and get out at least 3 times a week, because I still try and pack in a gym session and a few other things. So that's where I just sort of was like, right, the only thing that's going to work is get out in the morning. And actually I found the mornings have been really great, because I get up, it gets me in the, a bit of fresh air, certainly wakes you up in the morning when it's about 1 degree or whatever it was this morning out there. And then gets you in that mindset for, right, what have I got to get done today? Gets me thinking, wakes me up, gets all my senses going, and I find it really sets me up well for the day. And then I don't feel so guilty about sitting on my bum at my desk for a few hours.
Do you have any specific examples where a run has given you a lesson, or a run where an idea came through, something that you've transferred into your work?
I'm not someone that listens to music or anything when I run. I say generally I don't. But there has been, when I try and do some of my longer runs and I lose a little bit of enthusiasm because I'm not a long distance runner, I've started listening to podcasts. And actually they've been really great, because I quite like listening to things. There's a lot of kind of management ones. There's a lot of HR, because I do a fair bit of HR consultancy still. And I've found there's been really great kind of almost like learning sessions while I'm running. And then I come back and I'm just buzzing with like ideas and things like, right, I've got to look at that. I've got to research that. That sounds amazing. I've got some great ideas. So I feel like I'm kind of doing my CPD and running and working all in one go. It's brilliant.
Yep.
I've often had brain waves when I've been out running. I across the countryside, just shut off to something, then suddenly something comes to you and you're like, wow, that's a great idea. Why don't I do that? And then I'm frantic, like, how am I going to remember? How am I going to remember that when I get back? I need a pen, I need to write it down.
Tell us a little bit about one of your favourite trail runs, or a run from somewhere in your life that sticks in your mind.
I've got some favourite spots. I'm really fortunate that I'm not that far away here from the canal and out to Rushmere and Stockgrove Park, which is kind of just out on the outskirts of Leighton Buzzard, beautiful. And I'm actually also not that far from Dunstable Downs, which is a National Trust site. They're kind of definitely if I need to shut off and I need to just go and run, I quite often will drive over to Dunstable Downs, park up, and I've got some beautiful routes that I run around there. It's quite hilly, it's green, it's beautiful, it's windy, it's got everything you could possibly want. And that really is kind of one of those where I just get lost in nature and just one foot in front of the other, just let the time go, and I just thoroughly love it. But yeah, if I can choose to go for a run somewhere, it would definitely be across fields and countryside and woodland and by water than it would be on the pavements and the roads.
Tell me a little bit about your half marathon PB that you grabbed the other year, because that was in a hotter place, wasn't it?
Yeah, so I'm a strange one in that I love running in heat. No one can quite understand it. The summer is like my favourite time to run. The hotter the better. I've run out in the Far East, I've run all over, in various places across the world, and I just seem to do really well in the heat. I struggle this time of year when it's cross country in the winter, but I do love the heat. And I was kind of setting myself, because I wanted to do a half marathon and I wanted to do a fairly quick half marathon. That was my aim. I was like, right, I'm going to go for this. So I thought, well, it's got to be somewhere hot. It's the only way it's going to work. So I planned a bit of a trip, and my husband and I went out to Marrakesh, and I signed up for the half marathon out there. And that was the January of 2020. We just snuck that in before we all went into lockdown. So I was quite lucky that all timed quite well. And I think just the stars aligned that day. The weather was warm, beautiful. A lot of people are like, this is too hot. I'm like, this is perfect. And it was lovely scenery. It was somewhere new. I love running where I'm looking at different things. It's not something I've seen before. And I just went with it. And I'd put some training in, but I don't put masses of training in when I'm not someone that is focused on the training. I'd kind of run, make sure I got the miles in my legs, and then just see what happens. I managed to get a fairly decent half marathon time, which I was really pleased with. And then we went into lockdown, and 2 years just of all my training kind of fell apart a little bit. So we won't mention that bit, but yeah, I really enjoyed the half marathon, and definitely for me, racing in the warmer weather makes a massive difference for my times.
1 hour 36, well done. Got to mention that.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Have you considered any direct parallels between your organised approach and the way you stay on top of things with life and business to the way you approach your running? Yeah, before you go out to do a run, or when you know you're going running the next day, how do you plan? How do you get set for going out running?
So I definitely do kind of in my head every week. And this will sound really strange for someone, I probably only do somewhere between 15 and 25 miles a week maximum, which doesn't sound a lot, but I put a lot of miles either on the bike, on the stepper at the gym, doing weights. I do exercise in other ways that mean I keep my fitness quite high. But I do plan my week generally. So I go, right, I know I've got to get 3 runs in. When's that going to be? So I kind of plan that in. And if I've got races, I'm like, right, I know I can't race. I generally don't run the day before a race. And then I plan that in. And then I kind of, that allows me to kind of think, right, am I getting the right miles in? And then if I think, right, okay, I've signed up for a 10-mile race, I need to make sure at least a couple of weeks before that I've got the 10-mile race run in my legs, so I'll plan that in. I plan to the extent of I know roughly what miles I'm doing, what days I'm going to run, and that's kind of the base. I don't plan a route. I'm a little bit like, where do I fancy going when I get up? I know I've got to do 7 miles today, I'll just go. If it's early in the morning, it's dark, I roughly know what route I can do around the town and the areas. If I can get out during the day or later on, I'll go across the fields and out into the countryside. And at weekends, a bit more rain, I might go somewhere and do something slightly out of the area. So I plan to a point in terms of what I'm doing, but I don't plan my routes down to a T. That I like a little bit of a free rein just to see what the day feels like.
It's nice to have that little bit of freedom and that open-endedness, isn't it?
Yeah.
To just go where it takes you sometimes.
Definitely. Because, I might say, right, I'm going to go here. And actually, I think, no, really, it's really horrible and wet and muddy. And yeah, I love it. But today's just not the day for that. So I'll just change up my route. So it's good to have that flexibility. But equally, I do make sure that if I'm training for races or runs, I allow the right mileage to be in my plan leading up to it.
And without reaching too far, it's the same for business, isn't it? Where you've got to have that plan, you've got to have that direction, but at the same time leaving yourself the space to that word pivot and go in different directions and try other things. So I think there's definitely something there about having that approach and having that open-mindedness as well as a strategy and a focus.
Definitely. And I say that to lots of people I work with. They're like, well, this is the plan. It is, but things are going to change. I've had that even today. My plan for today has totally gone out the window because a client needs some policies drafted. That's what I'm working on today, which is why I needed to run this morning, get my head in the game. And again, it just throws it out. But making sure that you kind of have that flexibility, and I've got that approach where I am happy to, I like routine, but I don't like routine. It's like there's time and a place for certain things to be routine. Other things I like a little bit of difference, something to throw a curveball at you, do something a bit different, keep you on your toes.
You're a leader, you've worked with a lot of leaders. Who inspires you in leadership?
Oh, that's a good question. It's a difficult one because I think there's all the kind of big names, famous people that a lot of people talk about, but I think it's a difficult one. I've got quite a few actually. Something I hadn't really thought of here. I would say probably one of the best leaders was actually a guy that I used to work for many years ago, back in some years that I was working in the construction industry. He was an older guy when I was a bit younger in the work industry, and he was one of those people that really just took the time to speak to me, understand me, and make sure that the support was tailored to me to be as successful as I could be in my role. And there's very few people that I think I've worked with when I was working at a lower level in my career that I felt gave me that real honest and heartfelt approach to what I wanted to do and them as leaders and where they could support me. And I felt that they genuinely wanted me to succeed. And I think that really helped me in my career understand how I wanted to be with people that I worked with, and gave me the time of day. And I think to do that for your employee or the people that work for you has such an impact for them to be motivated and feel like they're really part of the team and what they're doing is valued.
I talk to people a lot, and what you've just said there about those experiences when you're in maybe the earlier formative years of your career. The same goes for young people taking up running or in a race. That encouragement that you give people, and as you just said, the tailored approach, the time just to listen and find out what the person's up to, can have a huge impact on somebody's life. And the fact you're remembering this person from, I'm guessing many years ago, and it still is there clear for you today, it just shows how important it is to do this. And anybody listening to this, I think we're both saying the same thing. If there is somebody, if you're working with people in the early stages of their career, spend a bit of time with them, get to know them, give them that encouragement beyond what you have to do in the job, because they will benefit massively from that, and they will see you in a different light and follow you where others might not. Yeah.
Be their champion. That's what they need, and they will appreciate that. And like I do, I remember very clearly how this particular my manager championed everything I did, and it was brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Is there anybody that inspires you in running?
Oh, everybody, because anyone that can run a marathon inspires me. I absolutely, I'm in awe when I turn up to events and I turn up to things and just see these amazing people that can do these amazing runs, from the people that might be first to the people that might be at the back of the group. Just anybody that puts themselves in the position where they are ready to go and do a run inspires me. I think that's brilliant. You don't need to be someone at the top of your game, I think, and I hope it's something I can pass on to other people, is somebody else to be inspired by being out there, putting the trainers on and running and seeing and feeling the benefits of doing it.
You told us about your coaching experience. but you also volunteer as well for the club as well, and that can have a big impact on people, can't it, when you are there supporting and helping people do their thing. And that's an important part of leadership as well, giving it back in other ways.
Totally. I do get involved where I can in quite a lot of volunteering work. I've done some mentoring in the HR work that I've done, you know, working with young people. I very much think that people don't quite often realise the benefits of volunteering, not only for the individual benefit you're volunteering to help all the individuals, but actually the benefit to yourself. Like where I can, I volunteer at Parkrun, and I volunteer at Junior Parkrun because I try and drag my son out of bed to go. And actually I have probably as much fun volunteering as I probably would running it, and to see people doing it, putting in the effort, laughing, cheering, and being able to encourage them, I have a great time, absolutely love it. And I think quite often people don't realise the benefits all round both sides when you get involved in volunteering.
It's like what we were just saying a moment ago, that encouragement that you can give people.
Yes.
It's enormous. And if anybody's listening to this who hasn't run, but has been on the sideline of a race or some sort of run, that support that you get from the crowd, the clapping, the cheering, come on, Amy, that people shout if they see your name on the shirt, it makes a huge difference when you are out there doing it, doesn't it?
Oh, 100%. Yes, definitely. And especially, I don't know if you've noticed yourself, but if you've got your name on your vest or something and suddenly you hear someone say Amy and you think, oh, and then you think, oh, they don't know me, it's just my name on my vest. But that moment of hearing your name, you're like, wow, yeah, I can do this. Definitely put your name on your vest or your running t-shirt.
Thinking of the business that you're running now and thinking back to where you were 10 years ago, is there a bit of business advice that you, a single thing that you could pick out that you would share with people listening to this that may be earlier in their journey?
Something I've learned is I'm quite a perfectionist, and that often got in my way. I would work hard at making sure something was perfect. I spend hours researching or writing, and same applies when I've done studying. And actually I've got to the point, and somebody said something the other day which was quite good, and they said done is better than perfect. But it's actually sometimes you have to accept that to get things done, you just have to get things done. And I think sometimes that kind of held me back a little bit in getting where I needed to be with things. And whilst yes, there's definitely a need for certain things to be perfect,